Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's right, we're ranking Transformers 1. Transformers 1 is a 2024 American animated science fiction action film based on Hasbro's Transformers toy line. It is set on Cybertron, the home planet of the Transformers, and it depicts the origins and early relationship of Optimus Prime and Megatron. This movie honestly caught me by surprise. It was better than I thought it was going to be on the trailers. So let's get right into those 10 essential aspects of a movie. First is plot. Does the movie follow a comprehensive story arc and is plausible within the world that has been created? Now, what's really interesting about this plot is the world that has been created. The world that is around Transformers. That's what was really interesting to this plot for me. The story arc it's a very typical hero story arc, friendship turned to rivals. It's very typical, and it's exactly what you're going to expect. You're going to see everything coming before it comes, but it's done well. But what's really interesting and gives it that nice curve or twist, something that's a little different, is the world that it's in, Cybertron, what it takes on, the history of Transformers, where they come from, how they operate. That part was really interesting to me, and I thought they did a good job with the two differences between Optimus Prime and Megatron. I mean, Megatron's always been that bad guy, and you just don't want to cheer for him. But in this movie, I thought he was very understandable. Now, whether you believed that the path he took was the right path, I mean, you could see why he did what he did. You could see why he became what he became, and it's somewhat understanding. I enjoyed that. I thought that was really good storytelling. Second is attraction. Does the movie have an interesting premise with a high entertainment value? Now, if you're like me, I had watched some of the Transformers movies, but honestly, I was too young to really pay attention, and it's been a while since I've watched them, so I really don't know much about Transformers, and I didn't know much about where they came from or anything. So if you're like me, then you're going to enjoy some of the history aspect of this movie, explaining what Transformers are, where they came from, how they came to be. That stuff is very interesting, and besides that point, they kept the main characters of Optimus Prime and Megatron. That was a good choice. You know who these characters become, and it is interesting to see the story arc of how they became these nothing robots who were just friends into being Optimus Prime and Megatron. It's done well, and it is interesting. Third is theme. What message or truth is the movie trying to convey? Now, this is a kids movie, so usually those kids movies have messages, and the message to this one is pretty simple. It's just about embracing your potential, understanding that no matter where you are, you can become something great. Something that was a little bit interesting that divulged from that main plot is also understanding that you can choose different ways to handle situations, and that's how you get something like Optimus Prime and Megatron, and understanding that you can handle it one way, but you have to think about the consequences of others, and when you do that, that can completely change how you handle situations. I thought it was a good message, and I thought it was portrayed really well in this movie. Fourth is dialogue. Is there a real feel to the conversations? Not much to say. I mean, this movie, it follows the children's movie guidelines. I mean, it's very typical, and it doesn't do anything crazy. It's exactly what you would expect out of a kid's movie. Fifth is acting. Are the characters convincing? Now, obviously, this is an animated film, so acting isn't quite. It's just about the voice. I thought the voice delivery was good. The lines were delivered well. The only problem I have is there's a lot of notable actors and actresses in this movie, but I would say, like, notably, Chris Hemsworth as Optimus it's just not a good fit. Not because he doesn't do a good job, but just he is already too famous, and his voice is too recognizable. So when I'm watching the movie, all I can see is Chris Hemsworth. All I can hear is Chris Hemsworth. I don't hear Optimus. I wish they would have chose somebody who maybe fit his voice a little better without being so recognizable. There's a couple other people in this movie that are somewhat side roles that I also can only hear their voices. So that's a little bit of being picky, a little bit of an annoyance. A kid's not going to care. But as an adult, it just kind of took me out of the movie just because I could never really hear him as Optimus. All I ever heard was Chris Hemsworth, and that's all I was thinking about. Otherwise, the delivery is done well. He doesn't really do a bad job at all. Nobody does. All the lines are delivered well. It's just the acting, the actor choices. I just would have chose somebody who wasn't so recognizable. 6 is cinematography. Is there creative use of lighting, setting, and wardrobe to convey emotion? Now, the visual aspects of this movie is done really well. I really enjoyed the cinematography, as in how the movie looked. The world that we were seeing was awesome. It was very detailed, very in-depth, lots of color. It was very nice and appealing to look at. The universe behind the story being told, the origin, Cybertron, everything about Transformers, they really dove into that a lot more than I was expecting, and that was a great aspect to the movie. It's something that for the adults. Now, all the dialogue and the cheesy little comedy sections, that's all good for kids, and the colors are nice, but for the adults, the interesting part was the story behind the story, seeing some of the background history of Transformers. I thought that was really interesting and really well done. It's a good piece of cinematography. As far as emotion goes, you don't really feel any large scale emotions. It's kind of how kids movies go. They can't really put in the scenes that would put in a lot of emotion for adults, and if you do, I mean, that's just a very tricky thing to do. But I will say that they do a good job of making you feel the way you need to feel for each scene. If it's serious, the tone is serious. Sometimes movies, they just, because they're a kids movie, they just want to joke and have comedy the entire time. But kids like when things get serious. I know I enjoyed movies that had serious sections to them, and they do a good job of keeping those scenes serious and having some serious plot lines that are just really well done. It's something I enjoyed about the movie. They don't excel in any kind of emotion, but they do a good job of making you feel what you need to feel when it's time to feel it. 7th is editing. This is all about the pace of the movie. The movie is an hour and 44 minutes long. It's a good length. It requires a little bit of that extra time. It should be an hour, 30-minute movie, and it really kind of is. That 15 minutes is what you need to understand some of the characters, but really the world that the movie takes place in, understanding the background of the universe that it's in. You need that 15 minutes to give you some of that information. So I really thought it was a good length. They didn't go longer than they needed to, and they just told a good, concise story in a nice, easy way to understand. 8th is soundtrack. I don't really have much to say about the soundtrack. Like most times, it's just there. It's nothing incredible. There's no emotion tied to it, so the soundtrack is honestly forgettable. I couldn't even tell you anything about it. 9th is directing. Now, I feel the director is in charge of the previous 8 aspects. He's the one that's got to put it all together, give it a stamp of approval, and make sure it makes a good movie. Now, the director is Josh Cooley, and this is only his 2nd movie that he's directed. His first movie was Toy Story 4. And then he directed Transformers 1. Now, Toy Story 4 is a good movie. He already knows, obviously, he's made a kids movie that is for kids / adults. And I feel he does a good job of balancing that once again in this movie. A movie that you can have your kids watch, but is not completely boring to you and is somewhat entertaining. The directing in this movie is done well. There's a lot of little choices that are done that are interesting and go well for the movie. I think this movie had easy potential to be bad, but he made a good movie, and a surprising one at that. Something I did not think was going to be that good ended up being better than I thought. I'm excited to see what else he is going to produce. 10th is time. Does it stand the test of time? Unfortunately, I don't think it will stand the test of time, and it's not because it's a bad movie. It's just not unique enough and not great enough to really stand out as a classic or something that people are going to watch all the time, unless you just really like Transformers. I like Transformers, but It's a kids movie. If I ever watch it again, it'll probably just be because my kids wanted to watch it. But otherwise, I would never watch it again. I don't think a lot of adults are going to want to watch it again. But I don't think a lot of people are going to say it's a bad movie. It just gets lost in a big pile of movies that are good, but not good enough to watch again. Now for the ratings. Rotten Tomatoes critics gives it an 89. The audience gives it a 98. And IMDb gives it a 79. Now, 98, that's way too high. I think, honestly, people are just influenced by the fact that movies have not been that good lately. And this movie's good. It doesn't have really any faults. It's just not great. But it is good. And I feel like people are just starving for movies that are just good. Because there's been a bunch of stuff out there with some flaws. And this one really doesn't have many at all. So I think people are just overhyping it a little bit. That's why you get the like 89 and 98 there. But it is a good movie. Just compared to movies, every movie ever made, it ain't near 90. 79, honestly, even that's a little high. I guess it's okay, it's fair. I would say between 75 and 80 is a fair ranking for this movie. It's a good movie, but it's just missing some aspects that need to be great for it to be up in that B and A range of against every movie all time. But I would very easily give it that high C range, maybe a low B range, just for the fact that it is a good movie. I just think people are influenced by the fact that movies haven't been that good lately. Now for the rankings. For the entertainment side in 2024, out of 16 total movies, it's going to be 10th, just below Civil War and above Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It's above Ghostbusters Frozen Empire because they're honestly both movies I wouldn't watch again. I have no need to watch again. But Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, it had bad parts to it. The story was a little all over the place. It did get to the interesting parts till the end. There's just parts I didn't like about it. Transformers 1, there's not really parts I didn't like about it. It's just not interesting enough for me to watch again. But it is a good movie. I've got it below Civil War for the fact that I would watch Civil War again. Now, Civil War is kind of a hard watch because it's so intense, but I would put Civil War on again. I just wouldn't put Transformers on again. It's not because it's a bad movie. It's just not interesting enough for me. Cinematically, out of 16 movies, I have it 5th, just below Trap and above Beetlejuice. Now, I have it above Beetlejuice because Beetlejuice was visually pleasing, but emotionally didn't really have anything going on. It's the same thing for Transformers 1. It's also visually appealing, but nothing really going on emotionally. However, Transformers 1 does have this background, and it does involve a different setting for the movie. It requires, background that has been written about, these robots and their origin story. I just feel that represents cinema better because it's so creative. And it's on this entirely different planet that's been made up, and this species that doesn't actually exist. I just think it gets credit for being a part of that universe and how interesting all of that universe is, along with it being visually appealing, rather than just Beetlejuice, where it's visually appealing and then it's got, that afterlife aspect. But for the most part, it's, just about death and the real world. So I just don't think it's as in-depth and doesn't represent cinema as good as Transformers 1 does. Now, it's below Trap just because I personally rank emotion before visual when it comes to cinematography. I feel when you are making me feel feelings because of a scene, it means I am totally invested in this movie and you've got me hooked, and I'm feeling fear, happiness, or I'm crying because I really care about the characters on screen. Trap does that. It does give you that emotion. It gives you anxiety, makes you think about what's going on. So because it has that, I have it over Transformers 1, where the emotion is just not really there. For the decade of the 2020s, on the entertainment side, out of 17, it's going to be 11th. Again, just below Civil War and above Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It's there for the exact same reasons. For cinematography, it's going to be 5th, again, just below Trap and above Beetlejuice. Out of the 17 movies, it's in the same place. It just have that one Gran Turismo movie, so it's not going to change. It's there for the same reasons. For all time, on the entertainment side, out of 23 total movies, it's going to be 16th, again, just below Civil War and above Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Unfortunately, my all-time list is just smothered with 2024 movies. When we get to 2025, it will be a little more interesting, but for right now, there's just not that much variety. I don't really have enough time to create more than one video a week, so 2024 is just really dominating. For cinematography, we're going to have a little change. Out of 23 total movies, it's going to be 9th, just below The Mist and above Beetlejuice. Again, I've got it below The Mist for the same reasons. It's below Trap. The Mist actually makes you feel, feelings towards the characters. You get fear, you get anxiety, you get hatred towards characters, you love other characters. Those are things that I feel is what's so beautiful about cinema, is when it really gets you invested and makes you feel those feelings. That's why a movie like The Mist is going to be above Transformers 1. Now that's all I've got for Transformers 1. A surprisingly decent movie. Comment, let me know what you thought about the movie. Otherwise, comment a movie that you think I should review next. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see more of the movies I review. Until next time, I'm Mr. Majoritarian. Stay classy, San Diego.